towards the glory of Indonesia. 10. Cut a generation. The political elite's uproar over Freeport Indonesia Incorporated's share blackmail shows that Indonesia's natural resources have been a shared dish between foreign interests and domestic adventurers. Our political human resources are increasingly trapped in a very acute egoism. They do not care about the fate of the people and the country. The important thing is that they and their group benefit. Resolved through the Court of Honorary Council, MKD? The phenomenon will not be complete. Taken into the realm of law? Many people are pessimistic that this problem will be solved fairly. The most appropriate way is to cut off the current generation. The post-Reformation generation turned out to be no better in character than the order they had toppled, Orde Baru. Corruption, collusion and nepotism, KKN, that they want to eradicate are even more widespread and rampant on a massive scale. Democracy is rolled out too far into liberalization, thus pushing this nation to lose identity. Indonesia needs a fresh new generation. They are full of vitality, human resources, and have a personality as an intelligent, polite, and religious Eastern nation. Cutting a generation revolutionarily is certainly very painful. It can even spill blood, causing unspeakable national injury. Then we need social engineering that can be accepted by common sense without breaking the law and even remains in accordance with the realm of democracy. Engineering was carried out by enacting conscription. Every student who graduates high school, SMA, Madrasah Aliyah, MA, or vocational high school, SMK, aged 17 to 25 must attend this program. Rather than all this time the controversy has revolved around the civil defense, Indonesian youth are better off doing conscription as well. Because, civil defense is knowledge, know the theory, while conscription is a combination of theory and practice. Moreover, output conscription can be a reserve force that can at any time assist the main force, the Indonesian National Army. If every high school, vocational, MA, and equivalent graduate follows the conscription, then the Indonesian generation can change its face, so that it can form a generation of discipline that has a strong esprit de corps and nationalism. So you can imagine Indonesia in the future has a golden generation that can achieve a glorious future of its civilization. We do not need to be allergic to initiating and implementing conscription, for example, fearing being said to be undemocratic or militaristic. Conscription does not violate democracy. Look at how many developed countries carry out compulsory conscription to maintain the integrity of their country and to build a generation that cares for their nation and state. Even the United States, who championed democracy, carried out compulsory conscription, even though it was terminated in 1975. But every man aged between 18 and 25 years must register with the U.S. Selective Service System so that whenever needed, the state easily called them to follow conscription. Conscription did not tarnish democracy at all. Mention some countries that implement conscription are not tarnished because of that. Indonesia's closest neighbors, such as Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand and the Philippines carry out conscription. Likewise, countries in the Middle East region such as Algeria, Israel, Iran, Kuwait, Egypt, Libya, Syria, Turkey, United Arab Emirates, and Jordan. Even a number of countries in Eastern Europe, Latin America, and countries that are members of Scandinavia many carry out conscription such as Austria, Finland, Mexico, Russia, Switzerland, and Greece. Applying conscription in Indonesia means this nation is stopping the military-civil dichotomy. Because these two groups are essentially the same, that is, both are the Indonesian people who have the responsibility of maintaining the unitary state of the Republic of Indonesia, NKRI. Thus civilians and the military have equal opportunities to get the best education in the areas of tactics and strategy and in the field of leadership. During this time, the TNI and Polri get a systematic and orderly education system, including in undergoing a career. while civil society received a sporadic education. Many people say that conscription can cause instability in the region, especially in Southeast Asia, because it suggests that Indonesia is pursuing war targets. Allegations like this do not need to be trusted, because the strength of a nation's military does not necessarily provide stimulus for war. On the contrary, the strength of the military can actually be used to maintain peace and create stability. Whether or not the military is strong is the right of every nation and state. Maintaining the Unitary Republic of Indonesia is an obligation for every citizen. So, undergoing conscription is a necessity for the nation and state. Very important, conscription can form a very strong national character. With the conscription, Indonesia can offer a strong generation who never give up. For the sake of goodness and truth, they will not back down because it gets in the way. Mountains will be climbed and seas will be crossed. They will not be afraid of the darkness of the night and will not be afraid of the waves of the sea. All obstacles have been overcome in the activities of the military. Let alone just natural obstacles, even facing the enemy they are not afraid. Thus, the conscription can produce the best generation capable of realizing a glorious Indonesia. At least with conscription, Indonesia produces a disciplined generation. They are able and ready to be somewhere in a matter of minutes, as is the life they have lived in the conscription. They will no longer wear the rubber watch, let alone betray the agreement. Likewise in matters of cleanliness, they are accustomed to keeping the environment carefully and cleanly. They wear clean clothes in accordance with the designation to maintain their honor and dignity. As such, the army can cut off the generation of apathetic and pessimistic. Moreover, the army always revived the esprit de corps, namely the spirit of solidarity, the same fate, and the harmony between group members, especially soldiers. With the army, the younger generation is increasingly concerned about each other, willing to defend their nation and country. They are no longer arrogant when they have strengths, but they are also insecure when they lack. Group solidarity can awaken the spirit of mutual cooperation, which is the basic attitude of the Indonesian people. 11. Conscription. Rather than just a state defense program, Indonesian youth are better off doing conscription as well. Therefore, defending the country is knowledge, knowing the theory, while conscription is a combination of theory and practice. Moreover, conscription output can become a reserve force that can at any time petrify the main force, the Indonesian National Army. If every high school, vocational, MA, and equivalent graduate follows the conscription, then the Indonesian generation can change its face, so that a disciplined generation, strong esprit de corps and nationalism can be formed. So predictably, Indonesia in the future has a golden generation that can achieve the glorious future of its civilization. We need not be allergic to initiating and carrying out conscription, for example, fearing being said to be undemocratic or militaristic. Conscription does not violate democracy. Look at how many developed countries carry out compulsory conscription to maintain the integrity of their country and to build a generation that cares about their nation and country. Even the United States, who championed democracy, carried out compulsory conscription, even though it was finally terminated in 1975. But every male aged between 18 and 25 years must register with the U.S. Selective Service System so that if at any time it is needed, the state easily calls them to join conscription. Conscription does not tarnish democracy at all. How many countries implement conscription are not tarnished because of that? Indonesia's closest neighbors, such as Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and the Philippines, carry out conscription. Likewise, countries in the Middle East region such as Algeria, Israel, Iran, Kuwait, Egypt, Libya, Syria, Turkey, the United Arab Emirates and Jordan. Even a number of countries in Eastern Europe, Latin America and countries joined in many Scandinavian countries that carry out compulsory conscription such as Austria, Finland, Mexico, Brazil, Estonia, Finland, Cuba, Russia, Switzerland, and Greece. Applying conscription in Indonesia means that this is stopping the military-civil dichotomy. Because, these two groups are essentially the same, that is, both are the Indonesian people who have the responsibility of maintaining the unitary state of the Republic of Indonesia, NKRI. Thus, civilians and the military have equal opportunities to get the best education in the areas of tactics and strategy and in the field of leadership. During this time, the TNI and Polri get a systematic and orderly education system, including in undergoing a career, while civil society receives a sporadic education. Many people say that conscription can cause instability in the region, especially in Southeast Asia, because it suggests that Indonesia is pursuing war targets. Allegations like this do not need to be trusted. Because, the strength of a nation's military does not necessarily provide stimulus for war. On the contrary, the strength of the military can actually be used to maintain peace and create stability. Whether or not the military is strong is the right of every nation and state. Maintaining the unitary Republic of Indonesia is an obligation for every citizen. So, undergoing conscription is a necessity for the nation and state. Making peace does not mean being weak and not brave to fight. People who do not dare to fight because of weakness means giving up and losing. While the history of a nation is always determined by the winner. Therefore, how could this nation be able to determine its own destiny if it did not have a strong military? Then there is no choice for the Indonesian people if they want to become a developed country and be able to win global competition in addition to having to impose conscription to get a tough generation. The most important thing is conscription can form a very strong national character. With the Indonesian army being able to offer a golden generation who never gave up. For the sake of goodness and truth they will not back down because it gets in the way. The mountain will be climbed and the sea will be crossed. They are not afraid of the darkness of the night and are undaunted by the waves of the ocean. All obstacles have been overcome in military activities. Let alone just natural obstacles, even facing the enemy they will not leave the battlefield. Thus, the conscription will produce a golden generation capable of offering glorious Indonesian civilization. At least with compulsory conscription, Indonesia produces a disciplined generation. They are able to be ready to be somewhere in a matter of minutes, just as life lives in the military. They will no longer wear the rubber watch, let alone betray the agreement. Likewise in matters of cleanliness, they are accustomed to keeping the environment carefully and cleanly. They wear clean clothes in accordance with the designation to maintain their honor and dignity. Thus the army can break off the generation of apathetic and pessimistic. Moreover, the military always revived the esprit de corps, which is the spirit of solidarity, the same fate and continuity between group members, especially soldiers. So with the conscription, the younger generation became concerned with each other so they defended his nation and country. Thus they are no longer arrogant when they have strengths, but they are also insecure when they lack. Group solidarity can awaken the spirit of mutual cooperation, which is the basic attitude of the Indonesian people. In addition to producing a formidable generation, TNI troops as the main defense force can have a reserve force that can be used at any time to defend the country. Seeing the various advantages of compulsory conscription, it is better for the government to decide to implement conscription rather than merely defending the country, which has recently been widely discussed. 12. Young leaders. This paper does not intend to harm anyone or any group. Nor does it mean to harm the older generation or the younger generation. Even if it harms the older generation, I am in it anyway, because I am 60 years. This thinking is purely share my concept of a future Indonesia that is clean, prosperous, just, and gets the blessing of God Almighty. Therefore, no matter how bitter the ideas put forward, all parties must accept them with a cool and relieved head. First, the leadership of the older generation must be cut off immediately. Because, the situation of life as a nation and state has not improved any party and any group that leads. The economy that is a dream of every child of the nation does not recover. Towards the triumph of Indonesia's economy further and further away, it is even impossible to reach it. Instead of becoming more prosperous, Indonesia has increasingly accumulated debt. Most of the natural resources have been mortgaged for an unlimited period of time. Politically procedurally seems to be getting better, because Indonesia holds elections at various levels. But substantively the election is just buying people's votes at very cheap prices. The mandate bought from the people is then used to hurt and harm the people themselves. Indonesia's social and cultural life is increasingly uprooted from its roots. Foreign life is considered better and higher than cultural wealth itself. Various national problems that arise are ultimately a matter of leadership. Leadership in Indonesia faced a dead end, from upstream to downstream suffered damage. Good leaders are numerous, but they do not have access to power. While entering power is the same as plunging into a corrupted world, because the process of political recruitment must go through a variety of winding paths that ultimately force leaders to take the illegal, bribe and collusion paths. Being a good leader without sufficient capital can be said to be impossible. So, returning to the spirit of 1945 is a solution. Look how Sukarno since a young age had become a political activist and rose to become Indonesia's first president at the age of 44 years. Listen to the struggle of the great Commander General Sudirman. In his 30s leading the troops, guerrillaism was ultimately the decider for independence. Also read the history of General Lon Nasution, who became regional commander of the Siliwangi Division, now Kodam 3 Siliwangi, at the age of 28 years. In general, the founders of this nation are very young. That is why, cutting the old generation is a solution, so that leaders and political elites in power are not contaminated by worldly pleasures and rotten political tricks. Let the younger generation lead. Ideally they have completed college around 24 or 25 years. They must be trusted as a mature person to lead. For the age of 25 to mature, the political climate on campus and at school must be changed. Normalization of campus life. In KK, the new order had officially been removed. But the spirit hasn't disappeared. Then it's time we let the extracurricular organization re-enter the campus. Please, Indonesian Student Association, HMI, Indonesian National Student Movement, GMNI, Indonesian Islamic Student Movement, PMII, Muhammadiyah Student Association, IMM, Indonesian Muslim Student Families, KAMI, Indonesian Catholic Student Association, MKRI, etc. Others enter the campus legally. Likewise the Student Council as a student government. Please do competition with extracurricular organizations. It is hoped that clean, talented young leaders will be obtained. Don't worry, they are being driven by political parties. Instead, it is they who will lead the nation, so they need to enjoy organizing naturally, even though it is only on the campus. Consequently, the intra-school student organization, OSIS, in high school or vocational school and junior high school must also be adjusted. Prepare the school organization to support prospective students who will become leaders. NKK and MOSIS have only been encouraging students to immediately finish school and study and then look for work. By revitalizing the political climate in schools and colleges, it is hoped that intellectuals will soon enter politics before they are tainted with the pragmatism of power. Look at the world leaders generally coming from campus activists, as a moral force. With the inclusion of young people in national leadership, it is hoped that the political world will no longer be polluted by political pragmatism. Older humans are supposed to be more wise. But the powerful parents aren't. They are often seized with disease post-power syndrome, wanting to rule for life and tend to be dictators. If you want to continue to exist, the older generation should be active but limited to the social sphere, not to political decision-making. Please advance education, the poor people are immediately assisted, prevent all the possibility of disaster. Thus, the older generation remains beneficial to humanity. 13. Managing conflict. Indonesia currently in danger, because it is surrounded by a number of potential conflicts that could explode at any time. If the potential conflict is not managed properly, it can undoubtedly lead to civil war, which can endanger the existence of the nation and state. A number of national agendas that have the potential to cause conflict include regional chief election, pilkada, simultaneously, area expansion, differences in perceptions among political parties regarding the party law, and understanding of tolerance. Simultaneous local election, if it can be carried out smoothly, can actually bring efficiency. At least, the government can concentrate wholeheartedly at one time, so that it does not carry out elections all the time. But in the contestation in the elections is not always linear. The regional head candidates are not infrequently exerting all their energy to win the elections, including mobilizing the masses when deemed necessary. If two or more conflicting groups of people meet in one place, it is not impossible that a clash will result in bloodshed. While spilled blood is often reciprocated with blood. Besides that, the regional election contestants do not always carry out sportsmanlike elections. Not a few of them do everything possible, including illegal methods, in order to win the contestation. This way, if caught by political opponents and not dealt with firmly and wisely, can cause chaos that results in horizontal conflict. If conflicts occur in only one area, it may be relatively easy to handle them. However, if the horizontal conflict occurs in several areas, especially if the accumulation of the conflict is more than 50% of the total regions that follow the election, then all the possibility of bad events can occur. Regional divisions in the last few decades have caused many problems that are incomplete. Resolving the issue of territorial boundaries, for example, is like changing the borders between countries, even though they are still in the unitary state of the Republic of Indonesia, NKRI. Especially if the disputed border has a potential income for the regional budget, APBD, then the conflict can be prolonged. The division of assets between the area of expansion and the area of origin is also often a source of conflict that is difficult to find a solution. Quite often regional leaders who are not wise solve solutions by intimidation and by way of reason. Some of them even dare to sacrifice their people as firewood to wage conflict due to the expansion of the area. All stakeholders who manage conflicts due to regional splitting must always be vigilant early, so that the point of very little conflict does not enlarge due to the political problems faced by each region. Differences in perceptions among political parties regarding the implementation of the law on political parties and their views on the development of the life of the nation and the land of water can also be a source of horizontal conflict involving mass supporters. As long as they can position the problem proportionately and prioritize unity, whatever the difference is harmless. Unfortunately, the political climate heats up uncontrollably if their aspirations are not accommodated, especially when it comes to power. When experiencing a political deadlock, desperate decision makers sacrifice their followers to physically conflict on the ground. Even though the implementation of the law on political parties is very diverse, there are often differences at the central and regional levels. If this is not anticipated earlier, surely the differences that can be accommodated turn into heartbreaking events that had not previously imagined. Moreover, if party management is burdened with irrational political interests, they will not hesitate to mobilize the masses for short-term interests without regard to the politics of the nation and state. If political party life is not returned to the true spirit, the nation and the state will experience disintegration. So, political parties must be strengthened with a vision that is to build a better nation and state. A serious problem that often tempts the emergence of national disintegration is a matter of public understanding of tolerance. In many cases, tolerance is described as a necessity for the majority to understand the existence of a minority. Understanding the existence of pluralism can actually still be understood as tolerance. But when tolerance is forced so that the majority does not exercise their rights and obligations because for the sake of tolerance to minorities, sooner or later this tolerance turns into counterproductive. Tolerance turns into coercion of one group against another group. It is more ironic if coercion is carried out by a minority against the majority. Tolerance should be directed so that all parties understand each other's existence. All groups must refrain if their presence must show other groups. But as long as their activities can be carried out well without disturbing others, why should shout tolerance? All stakeholders must work hand in hand to create a conducive climate so that the existence of the Republic of Indonesia remains eternal. Then all potential conflicts must be managed properly, so as not to cause excess that can damage the future of the nation and state. Guidance to Pancasila and the 1945 Constitution is becoming increasingly important. Because, both have historically been proven able to bridge various differences, including differences in ethnicity, religion, race, and intergroup, SARA. The Indonesian National Army will be the last bastion of guarding the Republic of Indonesia if all parties become weaker in maintaining unity. But on the contrary, all components of the nation early on guard and manage each conflict first not to turn into disaster. Social dynamics are a norm that must not be avoided. With the awareness of maintaining the integrity of the Unitary Republic of Indonesia, whatever its dynamics can deliver the nation and state to become more advanced. 14. Preventing the Civil War. The unitary state of the Republic of Indonesia, NKRI, on the brink of a civil war, when each component of the nation is not restrained and selfish. Already from there, Indonesia consists of various tribes, religions, races, and groups. If one party forces the will, the other party refuses. The others must also force themselves, while berating them. Mutual cursing will be returned with increasingly cursing insults. Still grateful, civil war only flares up in cyberspace. But if this phenomenon cannot be controlled, it is not impossible that this situation will trigger civil war in the real world. I am not at all willing to break out of the Republic of Indonesia and experience such a horrific situation. Who is lucky if the Republic of Indonesia experiences a civil war? No Indonesian nation has benefited. The winners become charcoal, the losers become ash. All are destroyed. Civil war will continue to be fought by the enemy of Indonesia. Because competing against fellow children is the cheapest war. By pitting sheep between tribes, between religions, between races, and between groups, then all destroyed by itself without the enemy issuing weapons and costs. There are people who cheer when we are broken. A fragile nation is an ideal condition for the presence of colonialists, in a new format, in collaboration with compradors who continue to fish in murky waters. Compradors take advantage of advances in information technology to overturn facts. The truth seems to be wrong, good looks bad, the victim is accused, proud of lying, not ashamed of being deceptive, and the loser wins. Being subordinate to other nations seems to be pride, while independence seems to be isolated. Only in these crazy times, colonized and pillaged by other nations became a parameter of success. The manuscript of Kaleda is increasingly seen the truth, Aminangi Jamanitan, the time has come, crazy times. All values turn upside down. But from the series of Raya Warsita's works, I really like the ending, which is Sakbijabajane Kanglali, Izujikangaling lan waspada. As successful as crazy people are, luckier people still remember, to God, and be alert, don't go crazy. Then, please everyone go crazy, but the lucky ones are still sane people. Oh nationalists, where are you now? Your country is being torn apart by would-be invaders. Your people work hand in hand over wealth and honor to the country that insults you and demeans you. Now it's time to get up. Gather the remaining bones of nationalism. Reorder the remaining nationalism so that it becomes more meaningful. Restore the spirit of the struggle of the nation's founders. Come towards a self-reliant country that firm stands on its own feet. Not a country that is supported by debt from overseas. O religious people, Zuyu does not merely perform rituals in places of worship. Religion is the source of truth and virtue. Come down to the city to spread virtue and truth. Your country now thrives on secularism and even looks atheism tree. Indeed, the brain and reason are very powerful, but they do not produce absolute truth. Only relative. Whereas religion gives you ultimate truth. Al-Quran Surat Al-Hujurat paragraph 13, also recognizes diversity. Nevertheless, Allah gives the highest value to whoever is the most pious. Then help your people towards a society pious, not a denial. Then reach your land that is increasingly overgrown with weeds. Get rid of values that are not beneficial for growth of the Republic Indonesia the sovereign of. Foster your nation with faith as an Eastern nation that worships God, even though there are diverse religions. Diversity is not a reason for conflict, let alone division. Instead, difference is a gift to complement and complement each other. Cover your brother's disgrace, not tell his badness to the whole world through social media. If you have slandered your brother, stop, replace it with positive information. We Indonesians are one in unity and unity. We are a great country that has triumphed and shined throughout the world. O leader, you will enter the highest heaven someday in the hereafter, if you behave fairly. But on the contrary, you will become a crust hell at the bottom of the hearth if you cause suffering and suffering to the people. Your people are becoming a great nation. Our diversity is torn apart, causing us to become even more vulnerable. The leader is the one who is able to unite. It is leaders who can ease conflicts between nations. So, it's time to side with all nations, not just your group. Baraklah.